Hey guys, today I'll be taking a look at the Apollo SE by McPrue. Now, for almost 2 years, I've been wanting to custom build a PC in an Apple case, which of course would take some modding skills. It's not an original idea at all, it's already been done before by others. I just wanted to do it for myself. Now, I did spend some time browsing the internet for some old Apple Macs for sale, but I never got around to buying one because other projects kept stacking up and it just got pushed to the side for almost 2 years. Then some time ago, I discovered the McPrue Apollo cases, which look very much like the Mac Pros with the iconic cheese grater panel. Long story short, I joined their Discord, asked for one to cover, and they sent me the compact Apollo SE V2, which is made for ITX and MATX systems. So in this video, I'll mostly be covering the build quality, the specs, the features, the hardware compatibility, including custom water cooling. My first impression out of the box was pretty good to start. The look and feel was exactly what I had imagined it to be. All of the parts are anodized except for the side-mounted brackets, which are electrophoresis. The outer panels are made of 6063 aluminum for better surface treatment, while the inner frame is made of 5052 aluminum for better malleability. The Apollo SE is roughly 17 liters and weighs just under 8 pounds, unbuilt, which puts it between the current NCase M2 and the Cooler Master NR200P. I also did catch a scuffed up area on the top of my front panel that's about 2 inches long. It's nearly impossible to catch on camera, but in person, I can tell it's definitely considered a B-stock unit. Another thing is that the right side panel isn't exactly flush. The corners are slightly lifted, and it's noticeable when I run my fingers along the seam. All other panels are fine though. Now, the Apollo SE does come in at around $350 to start, and that is a bit pricey even for an SFF case. And just for comparison, the Ncase M2 is about half that price, and then the NR200P from Cooler Master is roughly just under $100 nowadays. Personally, I don't have a problem paying just a tiny bit more for an artistic statement piece, especially if it looks good and does the job well enough, but $350 is just a tad bit too much, and especially for a B stock unit like mine. The panels do come off pretty easily as they do just snap into place and there aren't any screws you have to mess with, which is very convenient. However, I'm not always a fan of screwless panels because there is always a part of me that feels like it's never as secure. But this actually just depends on how well the retention mechanisms and tolerances hold it in place. I think this model does pretty well in that regard based on the feel and amount of force that I have to use. It's not that bad. The dust filter on the front panel seems to have pretty large perforations, which means I don't think it will do a great job at catching dust. For my personal build, I would just remove this purely for aesthetic purposes as I think it does look a bit cleaner. When it comes to dust, it's very easy to clean. These screwless panels come off pretty easily and you just take compressed air to it. In fact, some time ago, I did a video on open air cases versus closed air cases, and I covered the topic of cleaning. And it's relevant to that whole front panel thing that I just talked about with the dust filter, so check it out if you want to know more. Next thing I want to note is that the Apollo SE's default config is that the motherboard and GPU are upside down when built. However, you can change the orientation, but you will have to take apart the entire frame. Actually, only the front, rear, left, and right panels need to be swapped. Top and bottom stay the same. There aren't any instructions on how to do this, but as long as you keep track of all your screws and make note of the orientations of each of the panels, you'll get it done. Alright, let's cover some hardware fitment. For fans, the top panel can do two slim 120s, bottom panel can do two 120s or 140s, front panel can fit a single 120 or 140, rear panel can hold a single 92 or 120, the side bracket can do two 120s or two 140s, a 240 or 280 radiator. However, if the rear panel has a standard 120 fan installed, you may not be able to use your side bracket, but a slim 120 or 92mm fan in the back may still let you side mount a fan or even fit some 280 radiators such as this Corsair XR5. Then the bottom panel can also support up to a 280, and that's just about the extent of rad support in this case. As for CPU air coolers, you have a max height of 160mm such as the Noctua U12A, which will barely clear the side panel. And obviously with an air cooler like this, you cannot use the side bracket mounting for anything. GPU clearance allows graphics cards up to 342mm in length, 165mm in width, and 70mm in height. Just as an example, an RTX 4090 FE can fit inside with standard 25mm thick fans at the bottom, but the GPU is literally maybe 2 millimeters away from full contact. Honestly, I would recommend slim fans for a situation like this if you have a 3-slot card. Now, with clearances this tight, if you don't have a flexible power cable, I would highly recommend using a 180 or 90-degree power cable for your GPU, or at least an adapter just to make sure that the side panel doesn't apply any sort of angled pressure within the connector pins. The next topic is micro ATX versus mini ITX configurations. With micro, you'll have to move the power supply to the front panel like so, and cable management is most definitely required around a big GPU. For mini ITX, you can keep the power supply right next to the motherboard on the same panel, which gives more room for pretty much everything else. And with the PSU bracket, you'll definitely want to install it onto the power supply first so you get easier access to the screws. And when installing it back into the case, you'll also get 4 mounting positions to adjust for some small clearances based on your configuration needs. As for storage drives, when there are no fans installed at the bottom, it can mount up to 3 2.5-inch SSDs or one 3.5-inch hard drive. And part of the front panel can also house up to two 2.5-inch SSDs as well. Okay, so on to the topic of custom water cooling, which is my favorite, but unfortunately not in this case. In fact, in many cases that are closed off with their panels and you can't see anything. Because, when you put in a lot of hard work and effort and time into doing a custom loop, you want to be able to see it. But anyways, from a performance and a functional standpoint, can you do a custom loop in this case? Well, yes, you can. But if you want to cram in some really high-end components, then it may take a bit of work. So let's take a look. Now, currently, I am a bit pressed on time for CES projects, so I didn't fill the loop or do thermal testing and try a few other configurations I had in mind, but I can show you a mockup fitment build I put together. So in this case, I have a 13900K and a 4090 FE. Both are very high-end components mounted along with EK's Velocity 2 CPU block and DDC pump. Something like this is very useful in small builds like this because you won't need a dedicated pump rest unit in another spot since it's a 3-in-1 combo. At the bottom, I do have an EK Slim 280 rad with 140mm exhaust fans. Top panel has slim dual 120s, front and rear panels have standard 120s, and all of these are set to intake. So the idea is to pull cool air from everywhere, creating more of an internal positive pressure to help assist the exhaust fans for the radiators out the bottom. Additionally, for tight spaces, I used a 180-degree angled power cable adapter like this. Now, if I were to go back to the default orientation for this case, where everything was upside down, the GPU was on top, well, I would do exactly the same configuration with the fans, the exhaust, and the intake, and the radiator placement as well. In fact, I think upside down, it would actually yield slightly better temperatures because now that bottom radiator is on top. So hot air naturally rises up, so you can do an exhaust with the heat, and I think it would actually do slightly better. So shoving an i9 and a 4090 water cooled in this case with my current config is fine under certain usage, but I don't think it's the max cooling I can do because I do believe I can fit another 240 or 280 radiator using the side bracket. But in summary, the Apollo SE is mostly best when using air coolers or an AIO with the GPU on stock. Not a surprise. Other than that, it's a very expensive case. Pretty much double the price of an NCase M2 and triple the price of the NR200P. So it's not exactly something I can recommend unless you just absolutely love the Apple exterior. Anyways, I would actually like to do a follow-up video after I'm done with CES for hard tubes and testing with this case and see where it goes. But at the very same time, I don't know if many people would even care about this expensive case for it to be even worth my time. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you guys want to see a follow-up. All right, thanks for watching.